I've played a lot of games, and when we talk about PC games, while there is a finite amount of games out there, the chance of me experiencing all of them probably not going to happen, not in my lifetime at least. But I've played plenty, and you know, there's some good ones, there's some bad ones. The games I'm going to talk about today made me want to moonwalk across hot coals covered in Lego blocks. These aren't the worst games on the PC, but they come pretty close to me. And bear in mind, this is my opinion. You might love these games, and if you do, I can't take that away from you. So keep an open mind as we talk about the next few games. Let's begin. This game made my blood boil. It was the first RTS game I ever messed with, and if you've seen me stream, I have zero patience for games that don't work right. I don't care if it's a pioneer of the industry. I have one life to live, and I feel in some ways it's better spent playing games that work. After that initial run, I dabbled with a few more RTS games like StarCraft and Dawn of War, which with me understanding Dawn of War and loving how the game flow went, my cocky ass decided to say, hey, let's give Warcraft another chance. What could go wrong? Everything! Everything can go wrong! The gripes and complaints I had about the game the first time were amplified by me going back to it. The AI is as bright as the Coalsack Nebula, and they will watch their peers be ripped to shreds by the enemies. You have a fog of war, the enemy does not. They know at every single moment what you are doing, where you are going, and the last four of your social security number. It's tedious, annoying, and as much as I wanted to cheat my way through to at least see the plot, I wanted nothing to do with this game. I hope in the future other Warcraft entries are better, but this one, hard pass. You're gonna see a lot of Tetris from me because me and my grandmother streamed a whole bunch of those games live, and it was so important to me to check out these games with the person who took the time to play it with me as a kid. And for anyone who was there to see that magic happen, I was happy. Truly happy. Which isn't something I experience often because my Twitch community loves to break my heart. Tetris was a dope game, but there were tons of varieties of it. Alexei Pajitnov was the father of puzzle games, and his ideas were incredibly eccentric, and that was none the more obvious than Faces ... Tris 3. What a fucking stupid name. The full Tetris lineage went Tetris, Hatris, Weltris, now we have Faces Tris 3. Even Pajitnov was disappointed in it. The whole gimmick is that we build faces, that's it. That's the extent of the game. It gets old really quickly, and at no point did I find it fun. This is a rage game. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Jump King is one of those games that you'll struggle with, put down, come back a day later, and in some way it's insanity personified. The way it works, you can only jump, and if you miss a platform, you get punished pretty badly. I'm talking you can lose 4 hours of progress with one bad jump. And this is something we see often in the indie game market, chained together, only up, getting over it. There's this whole subgenre of Unity asset flips that cause us to have an existential crisis. But Jump King looks great. I actually don't mind the vanilla game. The DLC though, that's where things get wonky. There are 2 extra DLCs that came with the game, Ghost of the Babe and New Babe Plus, because if you pay attention to the plot, there's a smoking hot babe at the top, so we gotta get up there. Both of these DLCs have their own pros and cons, and unfortunately the cons outweigh the pros. In New Babe Plus, you'll find that one misstep can and will send you all the way back to the beginning. It's not fun in the slightest. I understand a challenge, but this is a horrible time. Just don't. XMen, now that's a franchise that was used and abused to make a quick buck more than half of the women I saw in Tropicana at 2 in the morning when I was stationed in Las Vegas. The company Paragon was known for working with Marvel licenses, and out of the 19 games they developed, 6 of them were Marvel. Now, in the overall scope of XMen as a franchise, this is the first game, and it was on DOS as well as Commodore 64. As with most DOS games of the era, at least the late 80s, it was rough around the edges. The problem is, at least to me, everything we need to do is isolated to individual commands. Want to use a power? Select it. Use a key? Select it. Get a key? Select it. Attack? Select it. Speaking of attacks, the combat in this is extremely hit or miss. I think if the combat hadn't been so bad that maybe, just maybe, I could have pushed through it. But as I mentioned before, I lack a certain amount of patience for games that lack key mechanics. If you're gonna make fighting a key element, make sure the fighting works. It's a lot like a driving game. If you're making a driving game, make sure the fucking driving works. This is a hot take. If there was any game on this list today that would cause some division, it would be this one. The Bard's Tale is a granddaddy of the traditional RPG. It is not a bad game in the way that the other games on this list are. It's very much a product of its time, and the elements of the original Bard's Tale paved the way for the genre, much like Ultima and Wizardry did. The reason I don't suggest this one is due to the fact that if you are just getting into RPGs or you're more familiar with modern RPGs, you will not have a good time with this. We spend a majority of the time wondering where to go, the combat is incredibly rough, and it's not uncommon to have groups of 20 plus enemies stacking on top of you. It's basically death by information. Have you ever played Wasteland? It's a lot like that. Now, I was going to tackle the original, but turns out that the one that I bought on GOG was the remake, which is a great quality of life improvement, but I constantly felt that I was making zero progress. For every step forward I made, I was getting pushed 15 steps back. And that's a surefire way not to have fun. Like I said, the game isn't bad, I just couldn't get into it, and for someone who is relatively new to the genre, all things considered, this might be one worth passing up for you. I know that there are folks out there who will think I'm a goon ass, and guess what? I am. And I'm glad you enjoy this game, but it really wasn't for me. FNaF is one of those franchises that kickstarted so many different YouTubers' careers. I remember watching Markiplier play the hell out of this series, and I remember the string of lore videos that MatPat made courtesy of Game Theory. This game held a massive cultural impact for kids and young adults of the era because it was different. It was an indie series that still somehow managed to catch us off guard. The first game was great, the second was wonderful, but then the third one came out and it was kind of lacking. If you've played the earlier games, you would be familiar with the basic idea. We're a security guard, we have to prevent animatronics from getting to us, and basically make it through 6 nights. The games usually aren't easy, and it does take learning a strategy that you can commit to make it through them. Five Nights at Freddy's 3 only had one major antagonist, Springtrap, who we have to keep at bay with audio cues, and that's it. It's very much straightforward, and I think I beat it on the first try. Scott Cawthon decided to hide the true ending through a very complex hidden switch system, and yeah, to me this is the black sheep of the franchise. FNaF 1 and 2, way better. I've talked about a lot of first-person shooters. I even have a dedicated episode to the genre that you can check out if you'd like. I'll link it down below in the description and at the end of this video. I've played first-person shooters from every era, you know, Wolfenstein 3D, Doom, Witch Haven, Serious Sam, Halo, Duke Nukem. I've played a lot, and for the most part, all of these games have a relevance in the gaming industry. But there exists one unwritten subgenre that makes my butthole pucker every time I see it, and it's colloquially known as Slavjank. These are games created by folks from Eastern Europe, and most of the time they are hilariously bad. Chaser is exactly that. You can count on silly mechanics, grossly uninspiring storylines, and a generally bad time. Here's the story for Chaser. We play as John Chaser, he's got amnesia, everybody wants him dead, we go to Mars. There you go. That's Chaser. To me, the controls were baffling, the difficulty is unbalanced to high heavens, and everything that made this game exist was already improved upon by literally anyone who made a first-person shooter before Chaser graced the bargain bin. This is 100% a dreadful game, and I would never want to play it again. It's like playing Twister in a porta potty during a music festival. It's just not a good time. Got some more Warhammer for you. This time it's Chaos Gate, a turn-based strategy game from Random Games. That's the developer. The whole idea is we control Ultramarines fighting the Word-Bearers Traitor Marines, ultimately trying to find Lord Zimrin so we can give him a warm plate of Imperial empanadas. Now, I was stoked to play this because historically the Warhammer 40k games have been rough. We had Space Crusade and Space Hulk, both of which were ports of the board games. Vengeance of the Blood Angels, which was an enhanced version of Space Hulk for the consoles of the era, which was shit. And Final Liberation, which I adored, but the game kept crashing. And here we are with Chaos Gate, a game that constantly has you wondering, what the fuck do I do? At first I was impressed, the graphics are wonderful, at least for the era, and the units aren't too stupid, but it goes downhill pretty fast. It's hard as fuck. It's a punishing game. It's a constant uphill battle, and like many turn-based games, there is a significant level of RNG. Shout out to XCOM. The controls are clunky and rigid, the missions are incredibly repetitive, and the things we need to interact with, you'll need a magnifying glass to see them. Oh boy, Hitman. So, I love Hitman. I've always loved Hitman because it offers so much freedom of choice in how we complete our objectives. Now, my first Hitman game growing up was Blood Money on the PS2. I bought it at GameStop when I was in college and I fell in love with the franchise. Then Absolution came out and the franchise still thrives to this day, at least from what I've seen. But if you go back and play the original Hitman games, you're going to learn quickly that the choices you have to make in the games and how you manage your objectives are completely at the whim of pure RNG and trial and error. You'll constantly be reloading and saving over and over and over again and try to figure out what the NPCs are doing. You'll end up reloading so often that you'll have the level figured out and do one big run to complete it. And in Codename 47, it's jankier than a county fair Ferris wheel. It's literally held together by wishful thinking and good vibes, right? Controlling 47 in this game is the equivalent of pushing a shopping cart with that one weird wheel, you know what I mean? It's not a good time. I will say Hitman 2 is slightly better than this, but not by much. A little while ago, I had a brief stint where I checked out Novotrade games, Novotrade being the company that made Echo the Dolphin. So yeah, they were clearly already in my good graces. But I'll be honest with you, I knew about this game for a long time. I just thought it was some offshoot of elevator action, because it feels like it. The whole premise of this game is that we're breaking into Elven Adambender's fortress, and we have to navigate different towers, each with their own elevators, while dealing with some weird mechanics and robots that really hate us. All the while we're doing this, we need to find numbers to unlock the central tower to go kick Adambender in the dick. The puzzles are trash, and because it's one of those games with time pressure, it's stressful. And to me, stress does not equal fun, it equals clinical depression. I actually don't like any of the Impossible Mission games to date, and the first one I played on the Commodore 64, it made no fucking sense to me in the slightest. And this one was the same exact game with sprinkles on top. I'm sure folks who grew up playing it will enjoy it and might be happy they were reminded of it, but I'd rather forget it. And that's it for today's episode. What did you think of this list? Are there any PC games that absolutely boiled your blood as a kid or even now as an adult? Feel free to tell us down in the comments section below. Our community is chocked to the brim with people who love remembering a time when life was just a little bit easier to live. And speaking of our community, if you made it to the end of this episode, you're already home with us. So feel free to hit that subscribe button and join the wild ride. I'd love to have you along. Finally, the most important thing you could do for me is to hit that thumbs up button, as it directly impacts the visibility of the videos and the projects that I work on every single day. As always, from my family to your family, good energy, good vibes. Fortefyre out.